Welcome to Love and Lies Audio, where we present to you the untold tales of love, lies, and life after betrayal. Every heartbreak has a voice, and this is theirs. I never imagined that one ordinary weekend could unravel the carefully constructed world I had taken for granted. My life with Claire had been a tapestry of routines, social obligations, and quiet comfort, a marriage that had grown predictable, perhaps even complacent. We had stability, a home, shared responsibilities, and a network of friends and colleagues who admired us for our steady lives. From the outside, it was enviable. Yet behind the polished veneer, I had no idea how fragile my existence really was. I was blind, seduced by comfort, lulled into a false sense of security, and utterly unaware of the undercurrents that had been quietly eroding trust for years. It began with a letter discovered almost by accident in the attic while I was going through boxes that had remained untouched for decades. At first glance, it seemed innocuous, a relic of the past, perhaps an old correspondence from her college days or a keepsake from a friend. But the handwriting, the tone, the intimacy of the words immediately set off alarms I couldn't ignore. "I can't stop thinking about you," it began. Those words pierced me with an odd combination of disbelief and dread. I read on, my hands trembling, stomach twisting into knots. The letters were addressed to no one I knew, or at least to no one who should have been the recipient within the confines of my marriage. Each page revealed details of her secret life, hidden beneath the routines we had shared so innocently. At first, I tried to deny it, to rationalize that perhaps the letters were misinterpreted, that I was overreacting. But the more I read, the harder it became to ignore the intricate web she had woven. Dates, locations, names, and coded references to meetings that coincided suspiciously with her supposed work trips or visits to her mother's house. The realization came in slow, painful increments. My trust had been exploited, my love weaponized. This wasn't a fleeting affair. This was meticulous, sustained, and deliberate. The attic yielded more than one letter. Hidden behind a false panel, tied together with a faded ribbon, a bundle of correspondence awaited me. Each envelope was a time capsule, each page a confession I had never sought yet could not turn away from. The letters painted a picture of Claire as someone I barely knew, a woman who had manipulated friends, colleagues, and even family members to construct a world parallel to our shared life. There were references to subtle financial manipulations, to quietly turning mutual friends against me, to creating narratives that made me appear inattentive or absent-minded. She had become the architect of a reality in which I was peripheral, a character in a story she wrote for her amusement. As I sifted through the evidence, my initial shock and disbelief transformed into a calculated anger. It was a cold, precise kind of anger, the type that sharpens focus rather than clouds judgment. I realized that if I allowed it, this discovery could consume me, degrade my reasoning, and push me into impulsive confrontation, the very reaction she likely counted on. Instead, I made a conscious choice. I would observe, plan, and reclaim control. The letters, once instruments of pain, became tools of empowerment. I began cataloging them meticulously, each note, each date, each inconsistency carefully recorded, forming a binder of proof I would later call simply evidence. With the binder growing thicker each day, I transitioned from passive observer to strategic investigator. I revisited the places she had mentioned, confirmed details she had omitted, and discreetly documented everything. The process was meticulous, almost ritualistic. I photographed the smallest traces, verified timelines, and cross-referenced encounters with people who had unwittingly been drawn into her orbit. Every verified detail strengthened the architecture of her deceit and simultaneously the foundation of my forthcoming response. Weeks passed in quiet intensity. My life, outwardly unchanged, was a facade for an internal operation. I maintained appearances, attended social functions, performed my professional duties, and shared meals as though nothing had shifted. Meanwhile, I watched her, noting subtle changes in demeanor, the imperceptible tremor when I entered a room, the measured way she presented herself to others. I knew she had not anticipated discovery, that the web she had spun for years could unravel with careful attention. My patience became both shield and weapon. I was no longer the husband she could control. I had become an observer, an executor of a plan built upon precision and foresight. The next phase required legal counsel. I sought out a lawyer well-versed in both divorce proceedings and public accountability. This was not simply about separation. It was about ensuring that the truth could not be dismissed or distorted. Every phone call, every meeting, every document became part of a meticulous strategy. I learned to balance caution with progress, to weave a narrative that was both undeniable and morally irrefutable. Claire had assumed that her manipulations could continue unchecked, hidden behind charm, social influence, and perceived loyalty. I was about to prove her wrong. The subtle social exposure began quietly. I shared verifiable truths with selected acquaintances, mutual friends, colleagues, and others likely to notice inconsistencies. The information was delivered in fragments, carefully curated so that curiosity and reflection would multiply its effect. I did not raise my voice. I did not demand attention. Instead, I let the evidence speak, allowing the seeds of awareness to take root in those who mattered most. As murmurs and whispered observations began to circulate, I noticed the cracks in her carefully constructed persona. She had relied on control and obfuscation, but reality is resistant to such artifice. Her image began to wobble. People who had once unquestioningly admired her started noticing the discrepancies, the faint shadows of truth peeking through the curtain she had drawn. Simultaneously, I prepared for the legal confrontation. Divorce proceedings, once abstract and distant, became the platform upon which truth would assert itself. Every piece of evidence, every letter, every photograph of clandestine meetings became an instrument in a symphony of accountability. I approached the proceedings with calculated calm. There was no need for theatrics. The documents carried the weight of authenticity. The courtroom became a theater where deception could not survive. I could sense the shift in her demeanor, the subtle panic that began to replace her confident composure. The web she had so carefully woven was being pulled apart, strand by strand. The public nature of these proceedings amplified the effect. Friends, colleagues, and social acquaintances who had been unwittingly complicit or simply unaware began to understand the scale of deception. Claire's attempts at damage control were futile. The quiet dissemination of evidence, combined with formal legal accountability, transformed the narrative of our life together. For the first time, I experienced the profound relief of reclaiming my story, my reality, and my dignity. It was not about vengeance in the dramatic sense. It was about restoration and empowerment. As months passed, the consequences of exposure manifested in various spheres. Social isolation, professional complications, and subtle shifts in personal relationships were inevitable, though they were never my focus. I continued to immerse myself in work, personal growth, and meaningful pursuits. Each step forward was a reaffirmation of agency, an assertion that betrayal could not define the boundaries of my life. Every mile I ran, every project completed, every new friendship nurtured became part of a larger narrative in which I reclaimed autonomy from manipulation. Throughout this process, I reflected on the nuances of revenge. True retribution is rarely a spectacle. It is subtle, enduring, and transformative. It is found in living fully, unrestrained by the constraints imposed by others. My life became a testament to resilience. Claire's attempts to undermine, deceive, and control had inadvertently provided the catalyst for my reinvention. With each achievement, she became less significant in my consciousness, her presence reduced to a shadow of regret and lost opportunity. The final stages of exposure were marked by silent observation. Claire occasionally reached out, attempts at explanation or reconciliation filtered through pride and miscalculation. I observed, detached yet aware, my calm exterior masking the internal clarity I had cultivated. There was no engagement beyond recognition. The chapter had closed. Her attempts to manipulate, apologize, or regain influence met with the unyielding barrier of my autonomy. Ultimately, the profound lesson emerged. Betrayal, when faced with deliberate action, does not have to be a source of endless pain. It can be transformed into an engine of self-realization and empowerment. By embracing patience, meticulous planning, and strategic action, I had navigated the labyrinth of deception without succumbing to the chaos of reactive emotion. I had witnessed the dissolution of a fabricated reality, and in the process, reconstructed my own. Now, in the aftermath, I continue to build, explore, and experience life without constraint. Each moment of genuine joy, each new endeavor, and each cultivated relationship serves as both reward and testament to the power of resilience. Betrayal, once a poison, has been alchemized into clarity, strength, and unassailable independence. I have emerged unbroken, untethered, and triumphant, not through spectacle, confrontation, or vindictiveness, but through the quiet, deliberate assertion of self, the most potent form of revenge imaginable. We appreciate you listening all the way through. Life can break us, betray us, or make us stronger than we imagined. Share your story in the comments and subscribe to Love and Lies Audio because the most powerful victories are often the ones unseen.